Hello friends and welcome back to another gardening video. Today's video is about these beautiful orchid plants and the problems they face during the hot Indian summers. If you are living in India, then you know that the summer temperature rises above 40 degrees and in some parts of India it's almost touching 45 degrees. So in this heat, how can you save your orchids from the hot summer and the problems associated with this season? There are two main issues which happen and I'm going to address both of them over here. As Indian summers are extremely hot, we need to water the orchids a little bit more frequently during the hot summers. Over here you can see that one of my orchids has got badly damaged roots. Now root rot has happened in this orchid and I realized it a little bit late when the leaves also started turning yellowish. So the root had grown really nicely. As you can see, there were so many roots, but the potting mix is completely filled with water and the roots all around are almost dead. So you can see the potting mix that has also become damaged due to overwatering, and the roots have also been damaged. You can see that the roots were so good, they had grown so well and the plant was thriving. But this summer the plant has got this root rot and two of my orchids got severely damaged. So you can see the potting mix, it is just totally destroyed, so we cannot use this potting mix again. So I'm going to show you the steps that you need to take when your orchid roots get these kind of issues. This one is the other orchid which got damaged, and you can see that this one also had good roots, but now everything is gone. How do you know whether the orchid has got root rot? It is by simply pressing the roots. You will find that they are not having any turgidity. I'll be telling you the details about the root a bit later on. First, let me show you the condition of the potting mix. After taking out these orchids gently from the pot, I saw that the potting mix was completely damaged, especially the coconut husk part. The shells and the charcoal etc. were okay, so I'm going to reuse this. So I'm going to put it in water and I'm going to give it a thorough wash. Twice or thrice I'll be washing it, rubbing all the stuff, and then I'm going to dry it out. And I also added some more extra charcoal. And for the potting mix, I'm going to prepare the coconut husk because it needs to be soaked in water for 24 hours at least. And over here I have put the husk in a bucket and I'm adding water to it. I'll be rinsing off this coconut husk twice or thrice and then soaking it for 24 hours. It is extremely important to soak the coconut husk because it removes the salts and the tannins which can harm the orchid roots, and the soaking also hydrates the coconut husk, and as it expands it becomes more porous, which is good for the orchids. Now coming back to the orchid roots, let us examine the orchid roots. If the roots are silvery grey with green tips, or if they are completely green, then the roots are fresh. Otherwise you'll have to remove the roots because they are damaged. The rotted roots are flat and the outer cover can be easily pulled off, so we have to remove each of these damaged roots. Then I left the orchids to dry off for the day, and the next day I prepared the pots. So over here I am going to use the coconut husk in the lower part. Then I'm going to add the charcoal bricks and the shells part later on over this. And before repotting the orchid, let me also remind you that if you suspect fungal attack on the orchid roots, which is not so in my case, so I'm not using a fungicide, but if you suspect fungal attack, then you can use a fungicide like saf fungicide or daconil. And then if the stem is also being affected, then it becomes a must to clean the orchid using a 1:10 ratio of hydrogen peroxide and water. But since my orchids are just simply overwatered and the roots are rotted a little bit, so I didn't do these steps. They are okay enough to be repotted. So I'm going to add the potting mix, and then on the lower side of the orchid I'm going to take a piece of this coconut husk and I'm going to cover the lower part of the orchid like so that it gets a moist environment so that the roots can come out easily as it will be moist. And then I'm going to place the remaining of the potting mix all around, and I'm going to gently give it a press so that the orchid is firmly planted inside the container. And this is how you can easily repot your orchids if they are healthy enough. But this orchid, as you can see, the leaves had also turned yellow due to the rotting roots. So it needs a little bit of special care. So I'll be extra careful not to overwater it this time. And after I finished off repotting this orchid, this one is the mangosteen variety, I also had to repot my other orchid which had also got root damage, but luckily the other orchid's roots, some of the roots were still viable enough, and so I could have a little bit of roots over there, and I quickly repotted the other orchid also in a similar manner. So over here you can see that my other orchid's roots, I could save some of the roots, they had not been damaged that much badly, so I repotted this one also. And then after repotting it, since the coconut coir was already soaked in water, so I didn't have to give it a deep watering, otherwise I would have to give it a deep soak before I kept it out in a shaded area. But since the coir was already wet, I simply gave a spray of water to the orchid plant, especially to the leaves and the stem, and then I left it out in a semi-shaded area. Remember, you should not keep out the orchids in direct sunlight after repotting it. So over here I have simply sprayed water and then I kept it in a shaded area, and this is how the roots have come out after some time. You can see fresh roots are coming out. And this one is the same mangosteen orchid which had negligible roots, and you can see this new stem has also come out. Now coming to the second problem, that is ant attack. This is a very common problem during the summer season in almost all the garden pots. If it is nice and moist, the ants come and attack, and this is the condition of the leaf due to ant attack. Somehow I noticed that the leaves were having these kind of patches and I didn't understand what had happened. Then I saw ants were roaming around on the orchid, and when I took out this orchid, I saw that the ants had made home in the potting mix. They had laid eggs and created a whole colony in the potting mix. My first instinct was to put the orchid in a container, and on 3 sides I gave it a little bit of Gimaxin powder on the container only, not on the orchid, so that the ants would go away from the smell, but they didn't go away. So the only option left was to wash the orchid under running water and then create a new potting mix. So I soaked the coconut husk and I removed the ants manually and I repotted the orchid like so. And this is the orchid. After some time it has also given out nice roots, and since the ants are gone, the orchid is thriving, but the leaf which was damaged will remain like so. So this cannot be helped, but this is how you can remove the ants, by washing the orchids under running water and removing the potting mix and giving it a fresh potting mix. And before hanging the orchids, I gave a spray of pesticide on the area where I had kept the orchids, not on the orchids or the pot, but on the area where I had kept it, so that no more ants would come. And I repeated these steps whenever I saw ants around this area. Also, you can see that I have given a cloth shield to the orchid so that the direct rays of the sun does not damage it. I hope you found this video useful, and thanks for watching.